Have you ever wondered why the world keeps repeating the same tragedies? Different faces, same mistakes. It's not just evil that shapes history. It's something far more subtle, far more dangerous. It's stupidity, the kind that wears a polite smile, nods in meetings, claps at speeches, the kind that obeys, not because it understands, but because it's easier. You think you're immune, but you live in a society that teaches you not to think, only to repeat. And what you repeat becomes your prison, because the true enemy is not outside. It's in every unquestioned belief you hold. Stupidity is not a lack of intelligence, it's a surrender, a silent handshake with comfort. It's when you stop asking and start conforming, when you trade truth for consensus. Bonhoeffer saw this, not as weakness, but as a force, a collective blindness that infects entire nations. And the infected don't look mad. They look normal. They're your co-workers, your leaders, your friends. And maybe, if you're honest, they're also you. The most terrifying part, evil knows what it's doing. It has intention, strategy, logic even. But stupidity, it's blind. It doesn't plot destruction. It enables it. It gives evil a ride to power, a seat at the table, a voice on the stage. And while you look for monsters with fangs, stupidity walks past you, smiling, nodding, obeying. You can argue with evil. You can resist it. But stupidity, it doesn't listen. It doesn't reflect. It just follows. Look at history, not the highlights, but the wreckage. Genocides, dictatorships, financial collapses. Do you think they happened because of a few brilliant villains? No. They happened because thousands, millions, chose not to think. They passed the responsibility. They said, "It's not my place." And slowly, the line between obedience and complicity vanished. Stupidity is not loud. It whispers, and its whisper, repeated by enough mouths, becomes the roar that brings empires down. You were taught that knowledge is enough, that if you read the right books, earned the right grades, wore the right mask, you'd be safe. But stupidity doesn't fear intelligence. It wraps itself around it like ivy on stone. Because this isn't about facts. It's about the refusal to see, the fear of what truth demands. To see means to act. To act means to risk. And stupidity, it prefers safety over reality. Even when the building is burning, it'll say, maybe it's just smoke. The truly dangerous don't shout. They repeat. They forward. They nod. They follow orders, not because they believe, but because they never dared to question. The Milgram experiment wasn't just a study. It was a mirror. People pressed buttons they thought would kill, simply because a man in a lab coat told them to. No threat, no reward, just obedience. You think you're different? Maybe. But the moment you stop questioning, you've already taken the first step toward that same chair. Power doesn't make people stupid. It reveals who was already asleep. The higher they climb, the fewer voices they hear. Not because truth vanishes, but because flattery is louder. Stupidity thrives in echo chambers, where dissent is punished, where questions are betrayal. And leaders, once curious, become gods in their own minds. They stop asking. They start declaring. And the world beneath them pays the price for their blindness. You think leadership is about wisdom, but look closer. Chernobyl didn't explode because of broken metal. It exploded because of broken minds. Warnings ignored, alarms silenced, reality rewritten to fit the script of pride. That's what stupidity does. It bends facts until they snap. And when they do, It's not the powerful who bleed first. It's the people below, the ones who trusted the smiling face on the podium. Stupidity spreads, not like fire, but like fog. It doesn't need logic, just repetition. One person nods, another follows. Soon the crowd is moving, not because they're sure, but because they're afraid to stand still. And you, watching from the edge, feel the pull. What if they're right? What if I'm wrong? And just like that, your mind, your only weapon, is handed to the group, wrapped in silence, tied with fear. The Asch conformity experiment showed this clearly. People gave the wrong answer just to match the room, not because they didn't know the truth, but because truth alone feels like danger, and being right isn't as comforting as being accepted. So you nod, you smile, you agree, and in that moment, stupidity wins, not because it convinced you, but because it made you too tired to resist, and tired minds are easy to govern. Today, stupidity wears a new face. It's viral, branded, algorithmically enhanced. Falsehood travels faster than truth. 6 times faster, studies say. Why? Because stupidity entertains. It enrages. It confirms what you already believe. It doesn't challenge you. It comforts you. And comfort is the bait. You don't share because it's true. You share because it feels good. And truth, it drowns in the noise. They call it your feed. But what it really feeds is blindness. You see what you like. You hear what you agree with. And little by little, you forget how to think. You stop comparing ideas. You start comparing tribes. And the world shrinks into 2 boxes, us and them. But this is how stupidity survives. It divides first, then it conquers. Not with bullets, with belief. They told you to obey, not to understand. They said, follow the rules, even when the rules made no sense. They punished questions, rewarded silence. And slowly, you learned. Safety comes from agreement. But agreement without thought isn't peace. It's surrender. Bonhoeffer saw this during the rise of the Nazis. People weren't evil. They were obedient, and obedience without thought built the machinery of horror. We want to believe we'd be different, that we'd speak up, resist. But would we? When silence is rewarded, when truth is punished, would you still choose to think? History doesn't repeat because of villains. It repeats because of followers, because of people who say, it's not my job to question. And in that passivity, stupidity becomes unstoppable, not through intention, but through inertia. Stupidity isn't uncertainty. It's certainty without thought. It sounds like confidence. It acts like conviction. But it's hollow. Ask a stupid mind to explain itself, and it gets louder, not clearer. It doesn't want to discover. It wants to declare, and power loves that. Because a mind that won't question is easy to lead, straight into disaster. The powerful don't need you to be evil. They just need you to stop thinking, to scroll, to cheer, to repeat. And when the ship sinks, they'll say, we didn't know. But someone always knew. The engineer, the whistleblower, the voice that was ignored, not because they were wrong, but because they made people uncomfortable. And in a world ruled by comfort, truth becomes the enemy, and stupidity the crown. You weren't born to obey. You were born to see, to ask the question no one dares to voice, to say, this doesn't make sense, even when everyone else nods. But that path is lonely. It costs comfort. It costs belonging. And most people will trade truth for company. But you, if you've made it this far, maybe you're not like most people. Maybe you're ready to stop echoing and start awakening. Because stupidity is not just an error. It's a betrayal of yourself. Every time you silence your doubt, every time you agree just to fit in, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're feeding the very thing that turns people into shadows. Bonhoeffer didn't whisper this truth. He shouted it and paid with his life. So now the question isn't whether stupidity exists. It's whether you'll dare to see it in yourself. The enemy isn't just out there. It's in your silence, in the article you didn't question, in the leader you trusted blindly, in the moment you said, "Everyone else thinks it, so it must be true." Stupidity doesn't knock down your door. It waits until you open it and invite it in, and once inside, it wears your voice, your values, until you forget they were ever yours to begin with. You scroll, you share, you nod. But when was the last time you thought? Not reacted, not repeated, thought. When was the last time you changed your mind? Not out of pressure, but out of truth? If you can't remember, maybe stupidity isn't somewhere out there. Maybe it's sitting quietly inside you, waiting, feeding on your comfort, your fear, your need to belong. You want to escape it? Then start by doing what most won't. Doubt. Not everything, but enough to shake loose the lies. Read what you disagree with. Listen to what makes you uncomfortable. Not to be converted, but to sharpen your own thought. Because thought is a muscle, and stupidity is what happens when you stop using it, when you let others do your seeing for you. Bonhoeffer didn't die warning us about guns or bombs. He died warning us about blindness, about the death of critical thought, about people who stopped asking why. That's where collapse begins. Not in violence, but in silence. And if you think you're safe because you're smart, think again. Intelligence doesn't protect you from stupidity. Only courage does. The courage to question, even, especially, when it costs you everything. So ask yourself, right now, am I thinking, or just agreeing? Am I awake, or just repeating what feels safe? The line between freedom and control is drawn in the mind, and every time you choose comfort over truth, someone else sharpens their control over you. You don't need chains when you're too numb to notice them. You just need a crowd and silence. This isn't just about politics or media. It's about your soul. Because to think is to live fully. To question is to reclaim your humanity. So the next time you hear the roar of the majority, pause and listen for the silence inside you. Is it your voice or someone else's echo? The world doesn't need more noise. It needs minds willing to stay awake.